My name is Bowman. I'm founder and CEO of Consumer Acquisition. We are a Facebook and Instagram marketing partner, founded in 2013. And what we do that's unique is we take a creative first approach to doing social advertising. We offer three things: fully managed services, a creative marketplace, and a SaaS platform. So to broaden the discussion a little, here are some companies that offer a similar service. We've kind of broken them out into the kind of key components here. My personal opinion is if a company is focused on a self-service ad tech platform only without incremental services, they're in fairly deep trouble. And that's because of the machine learning algorithms that have been implemented with Facebook and Google, certainly over the course of the last 6 months. But in Facebook's case, as recently as February 19th, and we'll talk about that some. So, the mobile ad industry is growing significantly. And if you look at Meeker's stats on the first line there, you see the size of the overall ad market. And if you zoom in just a little bit, you look at the duopoly between Facebook and Google, and it's a material footprint in terms of the importance. And as a bit of context, last year we spent just over $100 million doing UA for our clients. And about 60 to 65% of the time, people are spending a bulk of their budget on Facebook. Google comes in second, somewhere around 15 to 20%, and then the rest are mobile ad networks. And what we see is a fairly significant shift into the social ad market, in particular, Google UAC and Facebook. And the thing that I just alluded to is this concept of machine learning radically simplifying what a UA manager does during the day. If you look at the bottom there, this is a particular footprint of what Facebook has changed over the course of the last few years. And they continue to roll these things out with incredible frequency. I would say even greater than once per quarter. So it obviously started at click optimization and ran forward into app installs. And then it got more sophisticated to say, I'm actually not interested in just the install, but those who are going to purchase. And I don't even want the purchasers, I want the whales versus the dolphins versus the minnows. And then this February, they've not given it a name, so we're calling it best practice. And Tom will break down the specific changes. But think of it as companies who say they have AI built into ad tech platforms, or companies who are making substantial intraday changes to bids and budgets will find a material decrement in their performance starting in mid-February. So say that backwards. People who are following the best practices, who are not frequently changing bids and budgets, and who are avoiding going from the optimized phase into the learning phase, will see a significant increase in their Facebook performance. So if it's true that machine learning on Facebook and Google have gotten that good, well, what's next? And in our opinion, we believe that creative can be or will be the dominant driver of return on investment, or ROAS. And so zoom into just Facebook for a moment, and what's fascinating is there's multiple ways to capture a consumer. Are they on the go, say in a cab or in the subway? Are they leaning forward on their desktop? Are they leaning back on their couch or their bed at night with a laptop? Each of those user experiences comes with a unique way of experiencing advertising. And again, my opinion is video templates can assist with generic things like, let's say, travel, where you may have similar look and feel across many hundreds of ad sets, but they don't work well for non-templated creative things where you're looking to do mobile app installs or lead generation. Those need to be generated by a human, and unfortunately, AI cannot address those issues just yet. So again, of that $100 million in spend, here's what we notice. About 90–95% of the time, your testing is going to fail. And by failure, it means not outperform the best ad that's currently in your portfolio. So you have to do a tremendously heavy lift in order to optimize and find a new winner before that ad burns out. The more you spend, the faster the ad is going to fatigue, the more creative you need in an effort to maintain your performance. And if you look at the bottom graph, it was a live example of when we first launched, we did great, spend was up. As we increased spend, the fatigue started, and then we got a winner, and it pops back up. And so it's literally just a sine wave, it keeps going. But if you don't continue your creative testing, it's gonna peter out and your performance will drop fairly substantially. The problem on the creative side is the internet has gone from stills to videos. And obviously videos are order of magnitude more complex to produce because the failure rate's just as high. It's still 90–95%. So there's an awful lot of work that goes into creating videos that probably aren't gonna live for very long. So what's a potential solution? We believe that a creative marketplace can deliver fairly substantial creative at scale. And the key here is when you work with a company, whoever it is, make sure that they truly are experts in that particular channel. So if it's Facebook or Google UAC or Pinterest or Snapchat or what have you. The reason is creative, each of these platforms really truly does have a unique flavor to it. And the benefit of using an external company, even if you really like your internal team, is that you need to create a benchmark, a way of saying how good is good. When there's a firm that looks across many other verticals, not just your particular one vertical, it's an easy way of creating healthy competition with the internal team to make sure that new ideas are flourishing. One of the things we found is that creative teams have a tendency of getting tunnel vision. They learn what's working and what's not working, and they slow down the kind of explorative looks and feels because they know they're probably not going to work as well as sticking in the track of what has been proven to work. So over time, that performance will continue to dip also. In this case, if you get new creative winners from an external team, you then toss those winners to your internal team, and their ability to generate new ads is substantially higher. So what the heck is a creative marketplace? To keep it really simple, it's a creative brief. So the advertiser or a service like ours writes a brief. That's what are you looking to do? What are your brand guidelines? What would you like to try differently? Why are you targeting this? What's the persona? What's your Facebook audience insights? Who am I advertising to? What do they read, watch, and listen to? And why do they want to look at a particular ad? The advertiser then can come in, provide real-time feedback on the videos or images. The ads can then be single-click launched into the platform. And it also allows pretty easy flipping out of creative assets, and we call that creative analytics. So the business model of most of the companies that I showed on the earlier slide is pay per unit. So there's some fixed cost per image, per video, per carousel, etc. This is an easy to understand business model, and it ports very easily across the numerous social channels. And below is a really great example. There's about $3 million in spend for a particular client, and the y-axis is how much money got spent, and the x-axis is how many videos or ads were created. So you can see an awful lot of ads were created, and only a handful were scaled. So it's a different way of illustrating the 95% success, or I'm sorry, 95% failure rate. So when you're ready to work with an external team, they're obviously not as close to your assets as you are. So these are some recommendations, and we and other companies have good white papers on how to prepare for this type of work, so please feel free to look it up. But you want to look at brand assets. What do you currently have available? In the gaming world, what we've noticed is most of the assets reside in Unity or some other 3D rendering technology, and they're not easily ported outside of the game. So it's difficult to get layered individual assets so that you can create new types of creative. But you also have to understand what's the voice, who's the audience. Like if you can articulate it in a document, then it's very easy for the creative folks to come in and provide their look and feel. And it goes on with likes and brand mood and references. One of the nice things is Facebook in Canada is currently testing the ability to look up all your competitors' ads. So if you have a team in Canada, they go to a Facebook page, you can click on it and see all of the Facebook ads that are currently running. It's fantastic for competitive research, and it's something I would recommend you doing. My understanding is that will come to the US sometime this summer. So we constantly get asked this question, which is direct response versus branding. And usually those two things are in conflict, where how do you make a data-driven decision with a brand? And one of the things we try and encourage our advertisers to think about is this concept of a prototype ad. So most of the ads are going to fail relatively quickly. So they're going to last for around 10,000 impressions, and then they'll peter out and die. So if you can get consensus internally that we're gonna run fast, we're gonna get a little brand compliant, maybe 75%, and then if it bombs, we'll take it down. If it works, we're gonna do the rest of the 25%. On average, what we've seen is it takes 2 or 3 times the level of effort to be fully brand compliant than it does to get to about 75%. Meaning you can go really fast, develop prototype ads, fail fast, and then only enhance the ads that you know are gonna work where it requires the incremental investment because the spend is gonna go up. So concepts versus variations is kind of the fundamental of visual talk. One of the things you will find that most internal teams focus on is creating versions of ads that win because it's a known quantity. The very difficult thing to do is to create new concepts, something that hasn't been tested, something completely out of the box. Often when you get in a new employee, they're really good at it because they haven't hit their head against the same wall over and over. Or when you get an external team, they don't have that same kind of tunnel vision. So it's really helpful. Say this a little differently, small changes will equal small impacts, so that's the variations, where large changes equal substantial impacts. What we have seen is fresh creative can generate between 30 to 60% reduction in, increase in performance and increase in ROAS. So it's the easiest way to get to more profit is more creative testing. If we zoom in a bit then on just stills, right? What can I do with a still image in an effort to generate fresh thinking? So this is a framework that we've put together. And instead of kind of walking through each one by one, I thought I'd just show you a little video of some of the work that we've done that shows in a visual way the differences here. And hopefully this will work. Let's see. So you'll notice the differences between layouts, vertical, horizontal, whether there's a grid, whether there's not a grid, to include or exclude a mobile device, include or exclude your characters. I would recommend, unless you're doing a match 3 game, don't use your characters unless they're very well branded and understood. Of course, you gotta test the calls to action, whether you put them on the top, whether you put them on the bottom. In general, I highly recommend to never put the App Store or Google Play logos at the end. They don't need your help branding. People know those guys pretty well. Instead, it's about 15 to 20% reduction in performance if you do include them. With regards to colors, always use bright, super saturated colors, as it has a tendency of capturing people's attention. The best practice from Facebook and YouTube is that you've got 2 seconds at the start of a video to gather someone's attention. After that, you're going to lose them. The best length for a video is somewhere between 6 to 10 seconds long. So don't convert your television commercial into a 30-second or 15-second spot. Turn it into a DR spot that puts calls to action at the front, and then shorten the length of it. The most important thing you can do, though, is tell a story. So you want to be able to visually communicate what the app is about, quickly and shortly, and succinctly rather, to the people that are viewing the ad. Because they're just thumbing through the Facebook news feed, and you want to make sure that you can keep their attention. And here's just kind of a montage of a variety of the visual things that you can go through. And it just keeps going, right? So there's really no end to the level of creative that you could test. So it's encouraging to see that. So as I said earlier, the internet's really moved from stills to video. I would say probably 90% of the time we're generating videos now, so we have our own captive video editors and designers. So most of our clients are requesting them. And this one doesn't play for some reason. The idea is that, well, this wouldn't be a video, but I can't get it to play. Facebook created this concept from their creative shop. They call it Create to Convert. And it's a simple way of taking limited assets and moving them into a video file. Again, failure rate's very high, do some video testing quickly. So there's 4 basic examples that we're gonna walk through visually so you can get a sense of what they are. This one is basics in motion. So the idea is very simple video animation, a little bit of animation to stills, a few simple layers, and then characters moving. And if you got the music, use it. So what we first start with is the assets. So you can see how incredibly basic it can be, and then we'll show you the video. So this is from News Corp, an entity called Checkout 51, where they're looking to get people to use their app and then scan their receipts. The next example is brand in motion. So let's go a little bit further in terms of the level of effort. Let's highlight the brand of the game or the website or the asset and put it in motion so that you can see visually what it's about. In this case, this is from Glue Mobile, and it's a design home app. So it's simple. This one targets women 30 plus. And let's go to benefit in motion. This is think of it like storytelling. What is my app about? Who am I trying to communicate with? And can I get people's interest quickly? We'll break down the assets so you can see. Not very many assets being used. And then the final video. Again, Checkout 51, simple assets to create a video. And by the way, the benefit in motion is the one that usually performs the best. Demo in motion is the last of their framework. And the idea here is to just visually communicate that this is a mobile app by putting it inside of a phone. That removes the need to put download now, and it helps the viewer understand that it's actually a mobile app. The goal is to show the demo of the product being used, and then kind of zoom in so you can get a flavor of what the app is really about. And in this case, it's Glue Mobile's Gordon Ramsay Cookie Dash. That is it for the first section. I'm going to turn it over to Tom, where he is going to talk about the substantial shift that happened in February and what it means to you guys.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about how things have changed on Facebook in terms of how we're acquiring users for games and apps. So looking a couple years back, we used to optimize for mobile app installs. This is MAI. And really what you're telling Facebook at that point is to go out and bring in users at a low cost. As we've seen the industry shift as a result of Facebook releasing new products, there's now app event optimization, which allows you to target users that you want to make a purchase, for instance, or value optimization, which is identifying users who will make a purchase, but also purchasers who are going to spend more than average. And so as we've seen the quality of traffic kind of migrate over to AEO and VO, really what we're seeing is that Facebook is gaining an understanding of who the payers are and is presenting an opportunity for advertisers to go out and find the payers and effectively get rid of bringing in the lower quality traffic that they know is not going to monetize. So in this one here, this is focusing on a new, I wouldn't say a change in Facebook's algorithm, but something that we believe has become more pronounced, and also metrics behind it that Facebook has rolled out. So basically there's a concept of a significant edit, which is if you make any changes to your ads that are running on Facebook, they're going to be reset and going to go back into what's called a learning phase. So in the past, we used to take this really different approach from what we're doing today. And at a high level, we were launching a ton of ads, we were hyper-segmenting, and we were making many changes per day to each ad. And the idea there was that if we have an army of ads out there and we've got the right tools, that we can really start to manipulate Facebook's auction and go out and find the best users and gain some efficiencies in that process. As Facebook has rolled out, it's basically a penalty for making a high frequency of significant edits. We've had to adjust our strategy, and what we're doing now is focusing on fewer ads, going much broader from a targeting perspective, and then making far fewer changes to those ads. So what that means is we used to try to capitalize on intraday volatility and kind of game the auction a little bit. Now we're riding out that volatility And what we're seeing is that Facebook is incredibly efficient. If you just pass all the control to them and let their auction do their work, they're going to find the right payers at the right cost for you. And so this slide here talks a little bit about the relationship between reach and scale versus quality and cost. So on the top, the kind of biggest circle there is broad audiences, which would be no interest targeting, no lookalike targeting. But what you can do is tell Facebook through app event optimization or value optimization, I want to go out and find payers, and then cast a very wide net to allow Facebook to have a broader audience to find those payers. And then kind of moving into the smaller circles, you get interest targeting, you get lookalike targeting, which is LAL. And what you're doing there is you're restricting the size of the audience into what is hopefully a higher quality of audience. So what we found is that as Facebook has fixed or really improved the quality mechanisms to go out and run app event optimization and value optimization, we can now get away on the advertising side with being just far more broad with our audiences. So actually some of our best ads are running worldwide, 18 plus, both male and female with no interest, no lookalikes. But the really important piece there is to make sure that you're running value optimization or app event optimization so that you're creating layered quality with your optimization type rather than historically how we've done that with higher quality audiences.
Couple things to note about this slide is the cost for an event is usually 2 to 3 times the cost of purchase, and then the cost for a value event is about 2 to 3 times AEO. What that means is it has a propensity to wreak havoc on your LTV model, because now you can actually just buy the whales, or you can buy the people who purchase. So if you've taken into account only CPI costs, you may need to devise a model in such a way that you can have tiers based on their return for you.
Yep, and the other thing to add there is, as we've seen CPIs go up effectively 9x over the course of the last couple of years, we've actually seen ROAS or ROI improve through that process. So Facebook is just doing a great job of taking the lowest quality impressions off the table. This slide here is focusing on campaign structure. So there are several best practices that Facebook recommends following to basically help their auction do their work. And there's a few things in there that matter a lot. So when you look at the segmentation here, basically at a country level, you can break down your campaigns into different types of targeting. So maybe you've got some that are targeting app events, others that are targeting value optimization. And then underneath each one of those, you want to make sure you avoid audience overlap wherever you can. When you have too many ads or ad sets that are targeting the same users, you kind of take away Facebook's ability to do the deduping on the back end and really make sure that the best ad is being shown to the right users. And then there's a couple other kind of changes. So one is running many ad sets per campaign. In the past, when we were doing the army of ads with high frequency of changes, we would want to make sure that we had one ad per ad set, one ad set per campaign, and for the most part that gave us control. Now, handing control over to Facebook is where we're seeing a lot more efficiency. So creating many ad sets per campaign and then running many ads per ad set there gives Facebook all of the opportunity to control the auction and decide which of those ad sets and which ad underneath those ad sets is going to be delivered.
So if you're a Facebook advertiser and you wondered why your performance tanked starting middle of February, look at your campaign structure and map it to best practices. I don't think I included it in here, but you can look up Facebook Blueprint certification online. You don't need to take the quizzes or have your team kind of get the final LinkedIn certification, but the logic and the breakdown and how the algorithm works is all there, and it's very helpful.
So on the buying side, things have been simplified for us. We're able to target much bigger audiences, we're able to run far fewer campaigns, and through that process, what's really becoming magnified is the kind of one variable that's going to allow one advertiser to outperform another is creative. So we've been talking a lot about creative here, and this slide is basically just saying that you should be doing more testing, no matter who you are or how many ads you're currently testing. You can always do more, and it's my belief that creative testing, creative optimization is the highest ROI activity that any Facebook advertiser can do. So talking about testing best practices, there's a few things to focus on here. Up front, you want to make sure you're forming a test hypothesis. So what is it that you want to test, and why do you believe that that's going to outperform your current winners? To walk away from this test with clean data, it's very helpful to make sure that you're testing one variable at a time. If you change a bunch of stuff, you change your colors and the copy and everything across each variation is just so different, and you do produce a winner, you won't understand what are the variables in there that actually produce the winner, and you'll end up going back and retesting those anyway. So really important to get that right up front. During the test, just to make sure that no other variables are introduced, if you ever do need to make any kind of change, whether it's to budgets to speed up the test or bids to improve delivery, make sure whatever change you make, you're making to all ads or ad sets within that test so that they all get the same variable and you're not introducing a new one. And then post-testing, there's basically a lift analysis that you'll be able to look at, whether it's ROI or cost per pair. You'll be able to see from the data which of your variations is performing best. You can look at multiple KPIs there. One really interesting one on Facebook is just what are they biasing? Because the ads that start spending the most money, even if they're not the best performers, from a ROAS perspective or ROI perspective on early spend, Facebook is sending us a signal that they think those are the best ads and they're scaling them for a reason. So outside of pure just cost analysis, delivery is another one that matters a bunch. So on the creative testing hypothesis, there's quite a bit of different attributes that we can test and variations that we can produce. One really important one is video length. So Brian mentioned that somewhere between 6 and 10 seconds for most advertisers is a really strong type of video. Video length can be a little bit longer for more complex businesses that have a longer story to tell. But in any case, you want to make sure that you're basically running the shortest videos possible to communicate the message that you want to communicate. Branding is something you can also test. So the front of the video versus the end of the video, do you include it at all? All very good tests and easy to run from a production standpoint. In terms of refreshing creative, Brian had the slide in there earlier that showed basically what's going to happen to all of your creative assets over time is they're going to plateau and underperform. So 9 times out of 10, when we see an account plateauing, performance starts to slip, the path out of there is a big creative win. So making sure that we've got the right kind of process in place to get ahead of that burnout that we know is going to happen, that's very important. And then for gaming on the right side, pretty interesting to look at the concept of gameplay versus, for instance, trailers, which are kind of productions about the game but don't actually show how the game works. So that's 2 just concepts you can test. Characters tend to either really help or really hurt, depending on the type of vertical that you're in. In all of these videos, it really comes down to creating fast action sequences and making sure that you're piecing together interesting content and avoiding anything that's just kind of boring. So a few tips on optimizing your videos. So the first one is really just opening strong. So I think this is a huge difference versus TV advertising where commercials kind of build up and then the climax at the end, they tell you the call to action or whatever it is they want you to do. On the internet, you just don't have the time. People aren't going to sit and watch ads and allow you to kind of build up to the very end. So generally you want to hit them immediately and try to capture within a few seconds what it is that you want the user to do. Optimizing for sound is something that is also helpful, or probably said better, optimizing for no sound, because a lot of people are just thumbing through their news feeds and they'll watch your video and make a decision on whether to click or take any action there prior to actually turning on sound. So it's important that your video makes sense without sound on. Mention this one, make it only as long as it needs to be. So get the kind of core call to action out of the way early and then add some interesting content behind that. And then last, if you have great characters, use them. Brian mentioned match 3 earlier, so this is one vertical specifically where we're seeing the use of characters matters a lot. What separates one match 3 game from the other hundreds or thousands of competitors out there is that storyline that kind of exists in between crushing candy or whatever it may be. From that perspective, focusing on characters is something that can help in that particular vertical, but in other times, the focus on characters can kind of steal away from the message you're trying to put out there and actually detract from performance. So this one here is talking a little bit more about Facebook best practices. So outside of creative, what are the things that we can test? And there's hundreds. So even as Facebook has simplified the landscape for buying, there's still a variety of inputs that allow us to create variance between our performance versus the next advertiser. So there's kind of an army of acronyms that has risen up over the years. So you've got dynamic creative optimization, campaign budget optimization, that's DCO, CBO, and then dynamic language optimization, DLO. So Facebook's just been rolling out a ton of new products, and each one of these is helpful for the most part. Some of them don't work for every client, but I'd say every single acronym here is working well for at least one of our clients. And then in terms of the data side of things, there's new metrics coming out as well. So Facebook is now exposing a first-time impression ratio. So when you see your ads starting to kind of saturate a little bit, you may be able to understand the correlation between that metric and whether you need to refresh your creative. So the point here is there's a lot to test outside of creative, and Facebook will continue to roll out new changes over time, and as they do that, always a good idea to jump on them early, because those options, for instance, that exist for dynamic language optimization, they're less crowded when those products first roll out, and you often see very, very strong performance if you're an early adopter of some of these new products.
Cool, thank you, Tom. I forgot to mention Tom's our CMO, so he runs strategy on the accounts. So he's on the leading front edge of trying to make the performance work. So I'm going to quickly go through the remaining few slides here. This is, let's call it, the gladiator smackdown, why you should always be running some form of a bake-off or a test. And the primary idea here is you want to benchmark either your internal team or current agency with some other source to make sure that they are focusing intensely on performance, that they're getting new ideas, both in terms of campaign builds and creative, and that someone truly understands best practices of the vertical that you're in. So here's how I would recommend doing it. You do a bake-off that runs about 30 days. You want to spend between $50,000 to $100,000 per account. So whether you're running two, that's 50 grand each, or three. You want to be very specific in terms of the criteria. And we have a white paper for this too, so let me know, and I'm happy to send it to you. For example, there's lots of ways to cheat. Do you put more Android or more iOS? So specify the distribution between iOS and Android, specify the distribution between lookalike audiences, no engagement ads, etc. And then also the view-through window that you're using or excluding. And then make sure that once the bake-off begins, nobody looks at the other person's data, except for obviously the internal team. You don't share between external companies, except for Tuesday and Friday. So here's an example of the type of data that you can share. Why would you want to do that? Because it really puts pressure on both the team that's losing and the team that's winning. It keeps the intensity very high. And then at the very end, it's winner take all. So whoever wins the bake-off gets access to the other person's account and control. So just as context, we've competed 54 times and we're 54-0. So we're yet to lose. I'm sure that'll happen sometime, but it hasn't yet. In terms of UA bots, again, I want to go quickly through this. Machine learning has radically simplified what a UA manager does during the day. So it's gone from intraday quantitative analysis into creative analytics and less focus on making frequent changes. We believe that the next year and a half is all around creative testing. So as you move down this life cycle of changes that they continue to make, even post-February, creative is taking a bigger and bigger role. So part of what Tom laid out was this concept of automatic bidding. Facebook wants total control. Automatic placement, the right ad, the right person at the right time on the right part of their network, they want control. Is it a lookalike audience? Is it high value, low value? It's better if you give them control. They now have campaign budget optimization where they will automatically allocate ad set budgets between ad sets for you, which is why I'm saying traditional ad tech stack is going to suffer if they don't evolve, because only Facebook truly has the data and they're making changes in near real time. And then dynamic language optimization allows you to do things like speak in native tongues to the appropriate person. So, in wrapping this up, how can you work with us? In one of three ways. The creative marketplace, and for full transparency, all of our pricing is on our site, so it's /pricing. The creative marketplace is per unit, managed services is a percentage of spend, and our SaaS platform is also a percentage of spend. Can I answer any questions?
Does anyone have any questions? I have a microphone, I'm happy to use it. I mean, I find it personally really interesting, the whole kind of the difference in the approach, because the idea of being able to be really targeted seemed very useful from what you seem to be saying. This movement in Facebook has actually made it a little bit more easy to do test variation, but not necessarily have to have so many different iterations. Have I understood that right?
It's a little different than that. I think Facebook's doing this because they want very small advertisers and very big advertisers to compete on a level playing field. So they've got really sophisticated split testing and creative testing infrastructures in place that allow small guys to very efficiently compete with big guys. So if you can kind of bifurcate the strategy and bring in help on the creative side, you'll find that your UA manager, when they get the account in this new structure, will have more time to focus on creative testing.
This question, I'm just going to bring one.
You can yell.
Oh, yeah, I can probably yell.
Well, just we'll get it on the video if you get on the microphone, otherwise you won't get it.
Thank you so much for a great talk. My question has to do is, can you talk a little bit about UAC as well? I know most of the talks about Facebook, but how does UAC fit in the mix? And as somebody who's thinking about doing some advertisement, should we just focus on Facebook? Should we even consider UAC? Thank you.
Sure. So it depends on where you are in your spend velocity. I would say if you're spending less than $500,000 per month on Facebook, focus on Facebook. When you reach to $500,000, you want to diversify into some other channels. UAC is behaving very similarly to Facebook's new algorithm without a name, meaning it's much less work to get them to function well. However, they're still a bit behind. I would expect some large announcements from them by the end of summer in terms of how their platform is maturing. At least that's the conversations we've had with them. It normally goes Facebook first, Google second, and then depending on what you have, Unity, AppLove, and Bungle, a variety of mobile ad networks. But once you get Facebook right, you get the audience, the age, the gender, the demographics, the psychographics, the look and feel, and then it's much easier to expand from that into tertiary or secondary ad networks.
Thank you.
Anyone for anyone?
Yes.
Yeah, hi, thank you so much. I was just wondering if that last slide, if you could explain the different services a little bit, how they differ, and if do you guys also help with media buying, or is it just the ad creation, and does
Sure.
that include media buying?
Sure. So thank you. Appreciate that. I should have done that. I was lame. Managed services, we do everything for you. So all bidding, all creative, all optimization. So in the case of Blue Mobile, for example, we are their external firm. They have a team of 8 to 10 people running internal. If they do better any given week, they get more budget. If we do better, we get more budget. So it's all inclusive, all creative, all bidding, all optimization. On the creative side, you can work with us just to do creative. And there are a variety of companies that are now doing that, like Jam City and GSN and BGW. So there's a variety of companies that need help on the creative or video side, and that's isolated in its own product. Either you could do it yourself and write the creative brief, or we will do it for you. There's no incremental cost. Just we have a sense for what's working across many verticals, and we'd like to be able to help out. And then the last side is the SaaS platform. So it's think of it like Superpower Editor. And to be honest, I would not recommend it right now. I would wait for a month, where we are flipping the whole platform on its head to be a creative analytic platform, where we put creative first and the ability to analyze videos and images. It's pretty damn exciting, and what we'll release kind of in a week or two will be substantially better. And the reason for this push, as I mentioned, is Facebook literally, to me, flipped the whole industry on our head. Mid-February, we had to kind of figure out what the heck just changed. So all tool manufacturers need to rapidly evolve because of the gauntlet that's thrown down by them being very smart in the way optimization works.